Hey, everybody. It's February 19th, 2014. Where on earth did the time go? I'm still writing 1998 on my checks. Do you write checks anymore? I don't write checks.
Couple of months.
Couple of months for the gardener.
Couple
Um,
of months. Remember, you ever see old people at the grocery store writing checks?
oh,
They're
God.
the only ones that do
Yeah.
it.
And they have no idea why everyone behind them's angry.
Right.
Um, yeah, 555 was a cool shop in Australia. Anyway, so today, like I said, is Wednesday, February 19th. I've got the whiskey behind me. Um, and hey, Death Ride 69. Yeah, that's right. This is not my office in Huntington Park. This is Office Studios in Van Nuys, California, run by Brett Chasen and Bob Kulick. So I got a nice live room in here to use. I'm sitting in front of a SSL AWS 900 and great preamps. A lot of the preamps that I used to use on my old show are here. We're using those. And some of my mics, a lot of Brett's mics. Um, so we get to play around and have fun. What happened to Brett's opening monologue? I don't know. It just kind of fell away, I guess.
Well, today was more of a tech day, and there was no guests.
There's no guest today.
It was more of a
The
tech
lady
day.
from Glendale who knits the alphabet backwards, she had to cancel because she had an appointment with
So I
her.
figure if we have guests, we'll do it next week.
Is it right? She fell and broke her hip, didn't she?
Well, she's having the operation today.
Yeah.
We all want to wish her well.
Bless her heart.
Yeah.
Irma, we.
Let me close the door to the can.
Oh
Frank's
yeah.
onto something about it.
Frank said you should close the door to the potty.
Well, he's kind of right. It's not
Frank's that
everybody
way
has
though.
seen it.
Frank's our Chicago mama. So, for those of you who don't know, Frank Falbo, who was here last week showing off his new electric guitar, which is just absolutely amazing, by the way. He got tired of watching me mess with his Les Paul, so he took it to Falbo Guitars and redid it himself and made me a new nut from scratch. And it's got fresh strings on it, which are still stretching a little bit. But other than that, it actually stays in tune now, and it rings. And we got the cabinet mic'd up properly. Kirk, I did see your question, but I can't answer everybody's question immediately, so don't be offended. I have to play guitar and talk. And but I will get. What's the next amp in the producer line? Not 100% sure. I'm thinking about doing a 4 6v6 one.
That's why I thought that was a four, because I knew you were going to do it.
Yeah, I'm going to do. Well, I've done 4EL 84s, which is the producer 84. But Kirk, if you only have two producers, you're not caught up, buddy. I know. I'm just giving you a hard time, Kirk. It's fine. If I'm offended by anything anybody says here, I just smoke you from the screen. I've had guys on here type really rude things about my competitors or anybody and use cuss words in an inappropriate way.
Anything about me, ever?
No, they love you, Brett.
Because
They love you.
I will find you.
I will.
Well, that's
I don't mind cuss words at all if they're used, for fun. But when you point them at somebody's name, then I don't have time for you.
it's not nice.
I ain't got time for you. Life's too short for that. I'm old. I ain't gonna live long enough. Um, how about either producer and KT88s or Stone Pony? Yeah, possibly. I need to try them. Both of those tubes you mentioned are not in good supply that are reliable. Even though in the producer setup, um, they would probably work fine because of the lower voltage. But my experience with both those tubes right now is not very good. But since we're doing lower voltage stuff, I can get away with a lot more. Producer 6V, that's right. Didn't do the producer 84 due to my plan to buy the anniversary London. Well, thanks, Kirk. That's really sweet, man. You can buy whatever you want, brother. But yeah, it's the 10th anniversary. NAMM 2004 in Nashville, Summer NAMM, is when we debuted the London. We'd actually been selling them a little bit before that, but just to, like 10 of them or something. That was the time we said, we hung out our sign and said, we're in business to sell amplifiers. And that was a very fun NAMM because we shared with the guys from Coffin Cases, Johnny Coffin. And the amp was a hit. I had guys from Fender and Marshall and everybody coming over, hanging out in the booth going, what is that, you son of a bitch? And what's that?
Which amp was
The
this?
London, when we first released it. And which Brett has one over here. It's a stable in most studios here in LA. And quite a few in New York and London and other places as well. I should say staple, not stable. But it was a head turner at the time. It's 10 years ago. And that was really fun. Peter and I kind of looked at each other and went in the bathroom and said, shit, what do we do now? And then that's also when because of that amp, I had the president of a major corporation that I can't mention. They're based in Nashville, but I can't say their name. Get me and Peter aside at their party and offer us money for the company right away. At which point I said, well, it'll cost you $5 million. And he said, it's not worth $5 million. I said, it's worth $5 million to me. It's my baby. Chip Booth, random question. If something goes wrong, can a London Pro still run on one power tube? Yeah, it'll function. It's going to sound like ass, though, but yeah, it'll work. It's going to sound very anemic and poopy and not musical. Depends on what went wrong with the tube. If the blown tube is still passing current, but not signal, it'll work. If the tube's completely smoked, it's probably not going to work. Or it'll sound so awful, you'll think that it's going to blow up. What do you think of the guitar tone today? Kind of better, huh? Brett and I were talking in our pre-show meeting that we have every week at Lulu's restaurant.
Briefing.
Pre-show briefing. Yeah, the gain's up pretty high on the whiskey right now. It's like 8.5. Keep coming off camera. Am I doing that? And what we want to do is probably I need to do some shows where I'm in the room with the cabinet because it interacts with the pickups on the guitar just beautifully. Why my phone's... Oh, he always calls during my show. It interacts beautifully with the pickups. And you guys are missing that, so I want to try to do that. Why don't I use a band Daxall tone stack? Because it's endless chasing your tails. Band Daxall tone stack is really cool on paper. Engineers love it. If you've ever played an amp that has a band Daxall tone stack, you spend 20 minutes trying to dial it in. Because it's interactive. When you adjust the mids, the bass and the treble change. And if you adjust the treble, the mids and the bass change. I've had a couple of amps, I don't want to say names, that are famous for using band Daxall tone stacks. And if you need to plug in and play music, that is not the amp for you. Because you can spend a half hour dialing it in, and then you move to another room and it sounds like shit. And then you have to do it again, do it again. There's one amp company who's particularly known for using that kind of tone stack. And man, I could just never get them to sound right. I can get them to sound good. I just can't get it where I'm happy with it. I can go to the simpler the tone stack for me, the easier it is. Because what I want to hear is my guitar. I don't want to hear shades of my guitar. So a simple tone stack for me is much more effective. I even have a hard time with like Fender tone stacks. Because big problem is a lot of guys don't know how to use a tone stack. They think that the bass knob creates bass. They think that the mid-range knob creates mid-range. They think that the treble knob creates treble. They think that the presence knob introduces negative feedback. It's actually the opposite. A presence knob, there's only negative feedback when you turn it down. When you have the presence knob up, there's hardly any negative feedback. When you turn up a bass knob, you're not creating bass, you're allowing bass. When you turn it down, you're blocking bass. When you turn a mid-range down, you're blocking mid-range. You're not creating anything. So if you got a simple tone stack and your guitar sounds good and your amp sounds good, you're 90% there. Then you just want to do some tweaking. It's like, oh, this is a bright room, so I'm going to roll off a little top end. I don't want to roll off a little top end and thereby increase the mids, which is what a band Daxall tone stack will do. And also a band Daxall tone stack affects your gain. When you change it around a lot, it changes the gain structure on the amp. So you have to then, it's just endless chasing your tail. Long answer to a short question. Now, having said that, if you play jazz and you play really super clean, band Daxall tone stack's really cool. But for playing rock and roll and blues, country, it's not really very effective. But it's really cool on paper. I mean, you read about it and you go, damn, that's what I want. No, Matchless doesn't use a band Daxall. Now, my guitar stays in tune. I just beat the hell out of it. So I have to have it redone about every year and a half. This guitar, it's only 8 years old, but it's got about 25 years of playing on it. So anyway, for those of you that are new, the Whiskey, it's a pair of 6L6s, believe it or not. What you're hearing is 6L6s. The platform is basically a hot-rodded Marshall kind of platform. I'll be very open and honest about that. When guys make amps that sound like this, they try to tell you that they've invented something, and they're just spinning a little yarn. Profane Aeroplane. Yeah, that company is one of the... There's two main companies that use band Daxall tone stacks. And the one you're mentioning is one. The other one is very well known. So anyway, it's a hot-rodded Marshall. It's just our flavor of it. And I worked on this with my good friend Dave Friedman, who does master volumes just unbelievably well. As many of you know, I'm not a big fan of a master volume, but I kind of like the way Dave's worked. It's not a hot-rodded bassman. A Marshall is not a bassman. That's a myth. You read too much, don't you? A JTM 45 is similar to a bassman. That's the only Marshall that was similar to a bassman. Except for the transformers were completely different. The resistors were completely different. The capacitors were completely different. And the tubes were completely different, except for the preamp tubes. And the values of the pots in the amp were different. Other than that, they're exactly the same. That's what Fender tries to say. Yeah, the JTM 45 was loosely based on a bassman. But the rest of them weren't. The tone stack's in a different place on later Marshalls, and they have a cathode follower that works differently, and the phase inverter's different, and all this stuff. So, I'm just giving you a hard time because I love it when people make blanket statements like that. That's a Fender marketing statement. Well, all Jim Marshall did was copy a bassman. Really? Wow, that's astonishing. Why didn't anyone else do that? JTM 45 is similar to a Bassman. But you know what? A Bassman is similar to 95 other amps also that came right out of the RCA design manual. So Leo Fender did not invent that circuit. Neither did Jim Marshall. RCA did. And the 26L6 power amp with the tone stack on it is something straight out of the RCA design manual. Note for note, it's the exact same thing. So, don't buy the marketing hype. I love Fenders. A Bassman's a great amp. They didn't invent it. It came out of the RCA design manual. And you can still buy those books and look in there and go, well, I'll be damned. That's a 59 Bassman. The AC30 is actually a 5E3. Not really. You know, all amps are somewhat similar. We can go off on this, as long as we're going to do tech talk today. All amps are somewhat similar. Every amp has a resistor with a little capacitor going around it on the cathode of the tube, and it has another resistor on the plate, which feeds the grid of the next tube. So in that respect, all amps are 85% the same thing. Just like most cars have a cylinder that goes up and down, and when it reaches the top, the valves close and a spark plug fires and an explosion pushes the cylinder back down. All cars are pretty much the same. So in that respect, I guess the Ferrari is a copy of the Ford Focus, if we're going to follow that same logic. But there's a lot of other variables besides what you notice on a piece of paper. You can build a Fender amp, note for note the same, and put in British style transformers and European caps and European valves, and it doesn't sound anything like a deluxe. The real magic is in the chassis, Death Ride 69 points out, because Death Ride 69 is the guy that makes our chassis, so just so you know. It's actually the aircraft aluminum used in chassis that are completely responsible for the sound. Or if you're a Hendrix guy, it's completely based on the fact that he used a curly cord. That's all you got to do to sound like Hendrix is have a curly cord. It's a little more than that. So, hey, Bob. Bob Killick's here. The magic is in the people that make it, honestly. You know, Jim Marshall's probably not the only guy who was inspired by Fender amps. The only reason he made them is because Fenders are really expensive in England. And he looked inside of a Bassman and went, wow, this is a pretty simple amp. I could make this. But he couldn't get Triad transformers. He couldn't get Astron caps. He couldn't get Allen Bradley resistors. So he bought radio spares transformers, and he bought, what do you call them, WEMA caps and mustard caps, and he bought whatever carbon film resistors he could find. And he couldn't buy 6L6s in Britain for inexpensive, so he used KT66s, which is technically a different tube than a KT66. It's the equivalent in that you can plug it in the amp and it'll work. But a KT is actually a tetrode. It's not a pentode, and a 6L6 is a pentode. So the KT does not have a suppressor grid. So it functions different. So they're not really exactly the same. And they certainly don't sound the same. Oh, yeah, and the speakers were different. You know, Celestians versus Jensens. Hola, amigo. Yes, it's all been some wonderful accents combined to become the standards we all love. Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, I make a lot of dumb analogies, but like, you know, I make chicken and noodles with Parmesan on it for my kids at home. But it's not the same that, it's not the same chicken and noodles that Wolfgang Puck makes at Spago. But it should be, right? Because you look at the ingredients list, it's exactly the same. But it's not. These are logical errors that marketing people have done a fantastic job of convincing us of. But when you see a guy, any manufacturer talking about a competitor's product, like Fender does, used to do with Marshall, That's because they're hurting them. So instead of extolling the virtues of their amp, they'll talk about the weaknesses of somebody else's, which means they're in a weak position. Don't fall for it. It's okay. My voice is just too loud, isn't it? No, Jack Sani, you're not one of the devil's marketers. Come on. This is Jack Sani, who's actually a legitimate, honest marketing guy. You don't sell Fords by saying how shitty Chevys are. Well, you could sell anything by saying how shitty Chryslers are, but that's another conversation. There are just a lot of myths in the amp and guitar business that have been said enough times to where people believe it. Yeah, I just copied a Bassman. I got lucky. I just copied something else. Funny thing is, Fender didn't invent anything. They got that crap right out of the RCA manual. So this mic does not want to stay where it should. Hang on a second. So you do agree with Bill Hicks? What did Bill Hicks say? I'm good, man. I'm sorry you and I haven't been able to connect, Jack. Profane Airplane. Tech questions. Are the 1 watt 12AU7 power sections legit? Sure. Does that mean they're good? I don't know. It's up to you. Lamatone asks, what's more important to amp's tone, power or output transfer? Output by far, but you have to have a good power. The output transformer is what you're listening to. The speakers are only doing what the output transformer has told them to do. So you can build a fantastic amp, and if you put a cheap output transformer on it, you got a cheap sounding amp. There's no way around it. There's no skimping on output transformers. And from my extensive research on output transformers, you have to use really high quality steel. And the only high quality steel you can get comes from North America and Western Europe. All the steel made in Asia is different and polluted and different. Which one is the output transformer? Usually the smaller of the two that's in the middle of the chassis. The power transformer will be the one by the power switch. That's usually down on the end, like on this amp. The power transformer is right here. And then the output transformer is usually right behind the speaker jacks, because when you plug in a speaker, you're actually plugging in the speaker to an output transformer. So it makes the most sense to locate those with the shortest wire runs. So like on this amp, the power transformer is right behind these switches. And then the output transformer is around back, right by the speaker outputs. The shorter the run, the cleaner it is, more fidelity. Does that make sense, Jack Lick? Jack Like? I don't want to call you Jack Lick if that's incorrect. But bigger than the littlest one, yeah, that's a choke. That's a different thing. Or if you have reverb, there's a little reverb transformer on there. But of the two main transformers. Jack Sani says when he worked for Paul Rivera, he listened to dozens of attached to the same front end. Switching between them, the difference was stunning. Yeah, that's exactly it. The output transformer, in my opinion, is 51% of the amp. And you need good quality steel, really good quality copper, and you need a company that can make more than one good one. They need to give you 50 in a row that sound exactly the same. Yeah, little amps usually don't have a choke, Jack Like. Don't need them. And my 18 watt amps don't have a choke. I just have a resistor there. Do I like Haybor? I think they make really nice transformers. I don't use them. But they're good. They're really nice. I know a lot of guys use them and make great sounding amps. Those are machine wound transformers. In my blue line, I have only hand wound, which come from Mercury Magnetics. They're the only guys that do hand wound transformers. And then on my red line and then on the whiskey here, I'm using stuff from Magnetic Components out of Chicago. But Habor is great. Nothing bad to say about those guys at all. Just for my application, they haven't been the best. Paper bobbin. Bobbin makes no difference whatsoever. Paper bobbin's actually illegal now. You can't get any safety certifications with it. If you're cloning a transformer and you want it to sound exactly the same, you need a paper bobbin. Any engineer worth his salt can compensate for the difference in the capacitance and the bleed through a paper bobbin by designing the wind correctly. So you can make the bobbin out of whatever you want, and an engineer can get the same result. Same slew rate, hysteresis, Q, all these sorts of things. You just compensate, the paper bobbin theory comes from, it's the same logic of, all trees are green. I look out my window and every tree that I see is green, therefore all trees are green. A lot of people say my favorite amps had paper bobbins. If I wind it exactly the same, bye Jack, thanks for tuning in from Australia. If I wind it exactly the same, I'll have to use a paper bobbin to get the same performance, which is true. But if you use a modern bobbin, they haven't really used paper since the 60s, I think. If you use a modern bobbin and design it correctly, you get the same or better performance. It's really just up to the designer. The materials just depends on what you're trying to do. But I can't sell transformers with a paper bobbin in them. It's illegal. They're not safe, according to UL and CE. But I've had this conversation with 2 or 3 different. Oh, thanks, Jack. When you coming down, Jack? It's only I'll pick you up at the airport. Just go land in Burbank. We'll come over. But I've had this transformer conversation with 3 or 4 different transformer makers, and they all go, "Yeah, bobbin doesn't matter. It's just paper has a capacitance to it, and it has a way that electricity kind of bleeds through it, and it causes these results. And I can duplicate those results on a plastic bobbin. Doesn't matter." Are we lead free? Yes, we are. Mm-hmm. We are lead free and RoHS compliant. Isn't the consistency of hand wound parts the beauty of some amps? Why hand wound trannies in the blue line? Well, the thing about hand winding is you can do more complicated winds. I mean, the consistency just depends on the quality of the person you choose to do it. A machine can only do 4 interleaves, which would be a wind like this. So the way the primary and the secondary of the transformer speak to each other is through the connection areas. So on 4 interleaves like this, they're only talking here and they're only talking here, right? So like, for example, on the London that we were just talking about, that transformer has 11 interleaves, which is more than this. This would be 8 interleaves. So right away, there's just more information in direct contact between the primary and the secondary. So a machine can't do more than 4 interleaves. And when you're hand winding it, it's not someone going like this. I mean, it's on a machine and he's turning it. And then he stops it and it's got a little counter. I do 250 winds this way. I move it 20 degrees and I do 200 more winds, blah, 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 blah. So it's not like some guy, knitting a basket. There are machines involved, but they're operated by hand. You can hijack the conversation, buddy. Why hand wound trannies in the blue line? Well, the blue line is what we always did forever until 2 years ago. And I had so many guys coming to me saying, "I just can't. I love your amps. I really want them, but it's just out of my price range. I'd have to sell one of my children to get one, which is fair. You know, we all have different budgets and financial situations, and it wasn't a complaint. It was a guy, you know, a lot of guys saying, I really want to buy one of your things. So I'd talk to him. I go, well, the only way I could really save money on these is to use machine wound transformers, pardon me, which cuts the cost. I mean, the hand wound ones cost 4 to 5 times what the machine wound ones cost. And the transformers are the only parts of substance that cost anything in the amp. You know, resistors, the best capacitors cost like $3, which amazes me that people don't use better capacitors and resistors. They just use all that crud from China because they cost like 20 cents. But whereas, like, for example, on the London, since we're talking about the London, that's a pretty small transformer set. At my OEM pricing, meaning I buy 150 a year to get this pricing, it's $128 just for that output transformer. Now, if you were to go to Mercury and buy that transformer, I think it's over $300. But I get the pricing because we buy in bulk. On the best machine wound transformers, the best in the world, which I think we use, Magnetic Components. They make the transformers for Boogie and some other stuff. And Habor is equally as good. They're just a little different. You know, the whole set costs like $90. And the power transformer costs more than the output transformer because it's more steel. So, you know, I've got $300 in a transformer set versus $80, $90. The guys that are using cheap machine wound stuff, which, believe it or not, is half of the boutique amp companies that charge as much as or more than I do. They use really affordable transformers. You know, they've got $80, $90 in it, where I've got, you know, 4 times that much. So, can you put a hand wound tranny in a red line amp? Yeah, absolutely. Let's do some clean sound on the whiskey. A little loud, isn't it? Let's turn it down. Llama Tone says, is Magnetic Components the same as Vintage Tone? That's the same company. The Vintage Tone ones they're just sort of clones they sell. The ones we get are custom made. Let's see. Mostly deaf. Have you ever noticed a difference in batch mass purchase of transformers where one amp sounded significantly better than the other? Not with our vendors. But it happens with a lot of vendors. I can't say, I'm trying not to say names here. I'm trying to keep myself out of trouble. There are a lot of companies that have a reputation for being inconsistent. Mostly they're Asian. You know, the big Asian transformer makers that all the big names use, the most famous names in the business. They're known for being really inconsistent. A good friend of mine owns mass production amp company and got 2,000-3,000 transformers that were defective. Yeah, their copper is different and their steel is different over there. Very polluted steel. You know, they have different definitions. Like we use M6 steel in our transformers, both the machine and the hand wound. The definition of M6 is only consistent through North America and Western Europe. In China, they define M6 as anything that they stamp M6 on. So we'd say, well, I like to, I've reached out to these people for samples. What the hell? I'll just try it and see. I don't really care where it's made. If it's good, I'll use it. But I just haven't found anything. And then I get stuff and I go, wow, this doesn't sound like M6 at all. M6 is really high grade, expensive steel. So you can wind like a Radio Spares or a Drake or a Dagnall or whatever you want, but they used M6 originally. So a lot of companies, I can make you that, and they don't tell you that they're using like M11 and really much lower grade steel, which sounds different. Yeah, I'll make you one. It'll be $40. It's not with M6. And so I ordered some samples. This was 5-6 years ago from Federal and a few of the big Asian transformer makers, and they make transformers for like big names, huge names, the biggest names in the business. They make not Federal, but some other companies, Taiwan, China, Korea. And I listened to it, and I go, this doesn't really sound like M6. No, it's M6, we swear. Okay. Can you... And then I go online and look up the definition of what M6 is in those countries, and they throw a very wide neck to call it M6 because they know people in North America and Western Europe want M6 for their high-end transformers. Hey, Bob Dragich, how can you? Oh, good. The bass is coming through. Yeah, this is the deeper Whiskey 212. We're just having the most unstructured goof-off show today. I'm just doing a little tech talk, playing around with the whiskey. So what was this question? Oh, I'm sorry. Dan, what was your first electronics project? It was a fuzz box when I was 11. I always messed around with electronics, though, before that, but that was my first, I'm going to build something. Jack, this is a solid-state rectifier. Do you get a certificate of authenticity with M6? No, it's really just your vendor's reputation. To sell something you're in England, Dave, or in Great Britain, to sell something in the EU or in the United States or Canada, and you advertise it as being something, if it's not, you're committing fraud. And that's a crime. You can be prosecuted for committing fraud. So you just have to rely on that. If you ask one of your vendors they'll just, Sergio Hammernick at Mercury has shown me, here's the bill, just M6. Profane airplane, time for school. Adios, buddy. But I took everything apart when I was a kid. Like I'd have a record player and I'd take it apart and see how the belt turned the thing underneath the platter and how it connected to the motor. Like everything. I always took it apart to see how it worked. Even when I got like a toy dump truck when I was a kid, I would take it apart, straighten the axles, lubricate it, put it back together so it would roll better. I put graphite in my Hot Wheels. Jack Sonny asks, do you find much difference between tube and solid state rectifiers? I know my Tupelo is solid state as well. I dig the tone for sure. It's not so much a difference in tone with the rectifiers. It's a difference in the way it feels and acts. The solid state rectifier, the amp is faster and jumpier. And so your bass is perceived as being sharper, which isn't always a good thing. But in this case, on certain amp cases, it is. So what I've taken here is a pair of 6L6s and made them sound really like sharp, fat EL34s. What do I use for solid state rectifiers? We use a bridge rectifier made out of fast recovery diodes. Begs the question, why does China receive favored nation trading status from our government? We have to cooperate with them. They're the biggest country on the planet. They don't own us. A lot of people say that. If you look at the list of, this is my other nerd thing. I'm a political science guy. If you look at the list of money we owe people, China's not very high on the list. We owe countries like Japan and Great Britain way more money than we owe China. It just makes people nervous when we borrow money from China because they're communists. But the largest holder of U.S. debt is the American public. And that's like 67% of the U.S. debt. China, I think, is 14%, or 7%. It's really small. It's just they're political enemies, so that makes people nervous, but they don't own us at all. They don't have any sway over us. That's what people like to say because it makes them feel good, but it's really not true. What they do have over us is 1.5 billion people. And if that country ever wakes up, they will be such an industrial powerhouse that we're all going to look like Costa Rica. They could put an army together with sticks and come after us and win. They've got 5 times the population we do. So if they ever put all those people to work, we're toast. That's the real danger. Mostly Deaf says, Jack Sonny, Dire Straits Jack Sonny. Yeah, this is Jack Sonny from Dire Straits. Are you playing with anyone, Jack? Jack plays around a lot. Jack's a great guitar player, too. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jack. He was on the show, a couple years ago, Jack? 1.5 years ago, something like that? Bob Dragic says, would you recommend a solid-state rectifier to someone who usually plays humbuckers to keep the bass from being muddy, or tube rectifier, someone who plays single coils to soften up the bass? No, it's really, the recommendation is just purely subjective. If you play humbuckers, a solid-state rectifier is good for, let me get back over to the dirt. If you want it to be all soft and creamy and bluesy, then this tube rectifier is going to do better. Same with the Strat. If you want to sound like Richie Blackmore, then a solid-state rectifier is going to give you more of that. A lot of it has to do with the filtering, too. There's a lot of other variables. You digging the clean channel? Yeah, thanks, man. I was trying to make a dirty amp that had a valid clean sound. anyway, Bob, I kind of rambled on my answer there, but it's really a subjective thing. Also depends like how hard do you play, how hot are your pickups. There's no sort of magic formula. And then, circuit design has a lot to do it. I have some tube rectified circuits that I do like heavy filtering on to stiffen it up, but still have a little bit of sag. If you do light filtering and tube rectified, you get a lot of sag. There's a lot of ways to skin that cat. Where in your design do you define your voicing the most? Well, if I had to pick one thing, it's going to be the output transformers. But I have a formula I use. Like I like certain resistors in this position, always this kind of resistor on a cathode, always these kind of resistors in the power section. I have the coupling caps that I end up going back to all the time are Sozos because they just kind of do whatever I ask them to do. And they're very consistent. They're very clean. Sag is when you overload the power section and it actually sags and then comes back up slowly. So we perceive that as swell and blossom because we didn't notice that it went for a second. So when it gets back up to full operating potential, it feels like blossom and bloom. But, you've pushed an amp too hard, you can hear it sagging. It just can't do what you're asking it to do. But as far as the voicing, I like, there's a lot of things. I have a lot of factors. I like my screen grids on power tubes to always be a similar percentage to the plate, which is different than some other guys run it. There's certain bypass caps on cathodes that I like to use oversized ones on to increase the frequency response. Bob Dragich, great question. Did you learn most of your tone shaping techniques by trial and error? Yeah. It's kind of like cooking. It's very similar to cooking. You can put a little more salt in. Oh, that's too much. A little more pepper. Maybe that's not enough. And when you can do it yourself and compare components, I have these boxes called decade boxes. You can look them up. You can buy them on eBay used for $10. Where it's just a wheel that has a 0.01, a 0.022, a 0.035, 33 capacitor, so on and so forth. And it's got two little lead points, and you can cut that into your circuit and spin it around. It's like going to the eye doctor, better, worse, better, worse. So I've got a bunch of those decade boxes, and so what I've done is I take them apart and I'll load them up with Sozo caps, and I'll load them up with mustard cap. I'll load them up with other stuff, and that way I can plug it in there and go do 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 do. And some of them actually have an RC network you can create. So then you got to put resistors in there. So I'll make one with Allen Bradley resistors. I'll make one with Vichy Dale metal film resistors, etc. And then I can just cut that into the amp and I can spin it around, and it cuts the design time down dramatically. It makes a difference. One of the things that I don't do is go, well, that's the way Leo Fender did it, so that's the way I'm going to do it. Or that's the way Jim Marshall did it, so I'm going to do it that way. Sometimes I'll start there. W. Lawrence Stevens, hey, what's up, man? Big difference between the Freds as compared to the typical 4001s? Yeah. Freds are a little softer. They're not as abrupt. You get a little smoother transition with them. I like them. 4001s work great. It's not a huge thing. It's just Freds are a little smoother. That's about it. Oh, I'm in D. Yeah, softball. Thanks, man. Jack Sani, we did that when I was down with my amp. Yeah, well, that's right, Jack. We put a decade box on your amp. Jack wanted to tweak one of the first stages on his Tupelo to really dial it in for his playing style and his guitars. And we did that to your Tupelo. That's correct, Jack. You're right. Whoa, who did that? So you can hear this big cabinet, right? It's a 212. It's only like an inch and a half deeper than our. It's not huge at all. I just made it deeper and then we adjusted the port on it a little bit. How's it go? Jack Sonny, how much bigger is it than the 112? I'm still trying to get my rig all figured out. It's about as deep as the Elvis 112. It's pretty similar. It's a little taller, than the Elvis 112 that you have. But it's a pretty similar depth to the Elvis 112 that we sell now. I just kind of had to get the air pressure the same. To handle all this bottom end. Because this amp sounds stupid through our 112. If you own one of our Elvis 112s, you wouldn't believe how big it sounds through there. That's what I was doing at NAMM because it was killing everybody in our NAMM booth. I just demoed it through the 112. Oh, good question, Kirk. Man, you guys are killing me with great questions today. I love it. Kirk Spencer asks, I heard you speak of blueprinting an amp. Would you discuss the purpose of blueprinting and what it does for the sound? I will after I burp, sir. Blueprinting is a loose term that means you're going to figure out what kind of tubes you like. And it's not just, I like a JJ or whatever. I like tubes with a fast rise time. I like tubes that saturate quickly. There's a lot of variables in a tube. I like a tube that's a little hot. I like it's a little cold. Blah, 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 blah. And then we'll put it on a curve tracer. Miles Rose does this. You put it on a curve tracer, and we'll just put tubes in an amp until the guy goes, yeah, that's it. And then you put that in the curve tracer, and you go, oh, okay. You like a tube with a fast rise time, and you like a tube that maxes out just to right around spec. Okay. And then we mark that down in a little file. And you go down the line until you get the thing just absolutely tweaked exactly where you like it. And then in the future, when the tubes degrade, which they do, unfortunately, you can call back. Like we blueprinted Jared Sharf's amp on Saturday Night Live. We blueprinted Jerry Cantrell's amps. Keith Urban, Vince Gill, a bunch of guys. Then they call in and their tech goes, hey man, I need a new set of power tubes. Like, okay. You like a number 7. Well, here's a number 7. Here's a set of 7s. Our V2 on the amp is not working right. We look on his little file in Excel. Oh, V2. He likes a slow rise time on V2 that maybe is a little 10% over spec. Okay, I got those because Miles has graded all of our tubes. So it's just a way of tweaky. And If you have time to spend with someone like Miles Rose who can do the blueprinting, which doesn't take very long, it takes like a half hour, depending on how neurotic you are, then you can get it right, and we just put it in Excel, and then Miles checks all of our tubes that come in. So I can already tell, oh, this one has a medium rise time, and it's 5% over spec, or under spec or whatever. Chip Booth, what amp does Vince G play? From us, he bought Monterey's and Royal Alberts. He plays a lot of amps. He's got a pair of Deluxes he plays all the time. He's got this guy in Nashville that makes a Bassman clone. I'm blanking on the name. Those are really nice amps, too. I'm blanking on the guy's name now. They're really cool. So he's got a lot of stuff. Kirk Spencer says, so if I understand you correctly, it's a means of dialing in the tone to match the player's preferences. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Turn the gain down here just for fun. Again, these are really low output pickups in this guitar, and I should... Ron Ellis, if you're watching, can you make me a really hot bridge pickup, and then I'll swap it in and out of here. Go back up. What's up, Bob?
Christmas, we're gonna get you the Uber tuner guy. It's a midget person.
No, I got the guitar fixed. I was just bringing it back up from drop tuning.
Oh, okay.
Frank Falbo fixed it for me. It stays in tune now.
Don't cancel the guy.
Well, I'll still take it because it's a sweet offer.
I think so too.
And I love you for it.
I think you'll like it.
I'm trying to keep Bob from going, what's a Bob? Hey, Jack, Sonny, thanks for coming in, man. Always an education. Oh, well, that's nice. You're a generous guy. Yeah, your amp's due for a tune-up, man. You haven't had it down in like 2 years. So with all the playing and traveling you do, it's time to give it a bath. Yeah, come down anytime, man, or just send it to me. I'll make it right. Anyway, yeah, pleasure, Jack. I miss you, bud. I want to see you sometime soon. Let's figure that out, mon amour. So I got the gain now on like 6.5, 7. You ever have days where you don't feel like playing lead? I think it only happens to guys who are middle-aged. Yeah, Jack, I should come to wine country. I think you're right. Let's go to wine country, Bob. What are you doing this afternoon?
I thought we were having lunch.
You go out to drive up to wine country?
What kind of wine they got?
Man, good stuff, dude. Sonoma, Napa. My good friend Jack Sani lives up there. Who's Jack?
A special day.
You know who Jack Sani used to play with Dire Straits in the 80s?
Yes, I do.
Really cool. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. He's on here right now.
Hey, dude. Long time no see.
And
Where you living?
he lives up by Napa.
Oh. We'll meet up for a drink.
Yeah, he's like a wine gentleman now.
Very nice, Jack.
You know, those Dire Straits guys are all kind of
Yeah.
highbrow dudes.
Highbrow.
Yeah. Whereas I'm unibrow. is the way I think of it. But
Well, I'm only brow.
yeah, man.
Well, and mustache and a little goatee thing.
Yeah, it's good. It works. Here, let me see if I can move this mic where people can hear you, because we're not really rigged up for much today.
Gotcha.
We can share.
We're gonna share. Where's Sonny?
So, he was skiing, I think.
Yeah, and then a bad thing happened.
He's out skiing.
Yeah,
I hope
still,
he-
right?
I hope he's okay.
In the big sky there.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me turn this up a bit.
I mean, amazing. If you think about, Sonny Bono, the guy was a rock star, pop star.
Right.
And he was the mayor of Palm Springs. So he actually had 2 really great gigs. Not that anybody cares.
What is that song?
I Got You, Babe.
Yeah, I can't think of the melody, though. What's the first note?
You say, I say, I got you, babe. Right?
Babe.
He knows the easy part.
I got you, babe. The melody, though.
Yeah.
They say our love won't
That's
pay the
it.
rent, but I can't think of the note, though.
Yeah.
What is it? It's in G, I know that for sure.
They say our money can't pay the rent, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And then he sings, and she sings, and somebody plays, and it's the chorus.
Babe. I got you, babe. I got you, babe.
And then what happens?
I've got sun.
Right. Jack, don't hate us too much. I got you, babe. I got you, babe.
All right, which one's Sonny? Which one's Cher? You have the mustache. Damn it, I lost on that
Oh,
one.
God. Well, but we need to dye your hair black, and then we
Yeah.
gotta get you a costume.
Well, I like the
and,
mustache. You just
you
win
know.
right away.
I mean, let's be honest. Cher was hot. I remember when Gene was going out. Gene Simmons was
Cher's
going out
still
with
hot.
Cher.
Like 65 years old now. It's
Yeah.
like, damn, girl.
No, she still looks really well. She keeps herself in shape.
Oh, what's
and,
left of her? Yeah.
Whatever,
She's had a couple of enhancements. I don't care. You know
No,
what?
I don't care either. Progress through science is fine with me.
Right. When I was in college, I took a lot of philosophy classes,
Mm-hmm,
which shows you how fucked up I am. But, Descartes, right? I think, therefore I am. Existentialism.
I didn't know him personally, but I remember him saying.
Yeah. So I feel the same way about plastic surgery on women. If I can touch it, it's real.
Right. Well, then you have to include, other procedures that, like my leg has titanium in it. They weren't able to do that back in the day because I broke my leg.
That's
They would
right.
Put titanium in there. So
if you get
what's the difference between silicone and titanium or a facelift? I'll be honest. I actually tried some Botox and stuff just to see what it would do, and there are tons of things that people do. Facelifts, eye lifts, stuff like that.
All right. I'm getting hammered here. We got to go back to Tech Talk.
Right.
We
so
got off on boobs.
now
See
you
where
can-
Bob and I go? That's really bad. Kirk, if your producer's not sustaining, a lot of that might be you. But it's not a real high gain amp, so it's not like the big singing thing. You can't just sit there and go. You're not gonna get that sort of thing. And I got the gain down on this. I cranked the gain up. It's. A lot of that, you can see, I'm vibratoing the hell out of the strings.
I was watching a Cream video of Sunshine of Your Love, which you can see on
Right.
YouTube. And, back in the day when this was done, they didn't have any preamped amps.
Right.
So the Marshalls that they used were 100-watt heads, and they would just crank them up full whack.
Right, you get it.
And so
you
that's
get it
why
going
it's
into the pickup.
correct.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
proximity to amp, standing right in front of a 100-watt, or
Right.
2 100 watts, which was what I saw
Yeah.
Clapton play with back when I saw Cream back in the day many years ago. And he had 2 100 watts with 4 cabinets hooked up together, with that Les Paul SG that was painted that Todd Rundgren currently has. That was Jackie Lomax's guitar.
Right.
That guitar, he could hold a note forever because the volume was so much, and it connected with the pickup that if you listen to Live Spoonful, you can hear all that feedback. No pedals, no overdrive.
So, Kirk, what Bob's talking about is exactly what you're asking about. Jeff Beck played large amps, and he was standing right in front of them. He was playing old guitars that did not have potted pickups. And he also has, I don't know, does anyone have better facility with the instrument than Jeff Beck? If anybody can squeeze a drop out of a guitar, it's Jeff Beck.
Yeah.
So also, SPL does equal sustain, as Falbo points out here. So if you're playing at home at a reasonable volume, the amp and the guitar is not going to interact like that.
Yeah.
But
if you lay the guitar right up against the amp, you're going to get some feedback.
one of the big tricks that I've always done to get sustain is use a compressor. If you know how to work a compressor, which we can do a whole show on how to set a compressor. But there's a lot of good compression pedals out there that will help you.
Or sustainer pedals even. If somebody's looking for literally, I mean, again, sustain, feedback. There are pedals that actually facilitate some nasty sounds or some cool, even an EBO will hold a note for it. It's Brett the Chasin. An EBO will hold a note for you for, as long as you can keep that thing on the guitar forever, so.
But I mean, Beck can just sit there and go.
And then not really have a overly distorted sound like on, of course, We've Ended as Lovers. The sustain on that is so amazing, and yet it's a relatively clean tone. Dan's heading for 45 seconds. It's going to be an Olympic record. I'm calling the Soviet Union right now.
Yeah.
The gold record for sustaining on a non-sustainable amp is...
How's it go? I need a Strat.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
So,
name that tune. I can name it.
You know what it's called?
Purple Haze.
It's close.
No?
Foxy Lady.
Oh, that was Foxy Lady. Sorry. It was Foxy Lady.
So I was doing whatever it is, whatever's note.
Yeah.
Forget, he hit some weird atonic note.
That's right.
That's
Right.
like.
Yeah.
He plays an F and then it goes down to E.
Yeah. There was a true genius to Hendrix, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
With his pedals and all that stuff, it really didn't matter what amps he used. He could squeeze that sound out of whatever it was, That old English fuzz face, wah-wah pedal, that stuff.
Yeah.
When he did the bum, Foxy Lady.
Yeah, that's all. But the phrasing on that is what's so cool. He's not just going.
No,
it's got this. That little stutter in there.
Yeah. He was just also did amazing jobs. And again, didn't have the high gain amps that were around today.
I won't do you no harm. Jimmy.
Yeah, Jimmy.
If you had the little magic genie, 3 wishes,
bring him back.
Would it be hard for the first 2 not to be Jimmy and John Lennon?
Yeah.
And then world peace and some other shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Genie, where are you? Genie in the bottle, where are you?
Yeah.
Grant us the 3 wishes.
I want John Lennon back. I want Jimi Hendrix back.
And world peace.
And
we'll take that.
World peace. Yeah.
World peace.
I don't even care about being rich. That's fine. World peace will make me rich.
There you go. You could be the person that facilitated world peace, and
I'll write a book about it.
You could write a book. It could be on Oprah. It could be on The View.
I'll write a little.
Get an article in Guitar Player magazine.
Yeah.
Anything.
Kirk Spencer, because we've ended as lovers, you have to turn the guitar volume off, pick the note, and then bleed. Can you?
You mean the swell things that he does?
Yeah, that's just him with his pinky out on that, because that's mostly a Les Paul. I know that's like, because we've entered as lovers, if I remember correctly, is 4 or 5 different solos cut together.
Probably so.
Because you can hear him changing like Les Paul to Strat.
That's correct.
Or Les Paul to his Esquire.
Yeah, right.
His old Esquire Telly.
Some of this, those little tender stuff, obviously, he was able to either turn down the guitar or switch guitars to try to blend those tunes. So this way, when he turned up, it had a lot of drama to it because it was mellow and sensitive and soulful, and then it had fire and brimstone.
Well, he's trying to play the guitar like a violin.
Yeah, Jeff Beck, certainly one of my top 5 guitar players of all time. So he played live several times, and I was always blown away by his playing.
Yeah.
And plays with his fingers. Doesn't use a pick now. It's all
right.
fingers.
I don't think he's used a pick for decades.
Yeah. Back in the day when I saw him play with the Jeff Beck group with Rod Stewart singing, he used a pick when he had that old Les Paul that he had the finish taken off on.
When I got interested in Beck the first time, I think I was like 13, and there was an article in Guitar Player or something. He was talking about how he did hybrid picking, where he played like this, like Chet Atkins or something.
Yeah,
and it
utilized his fingers.
But
too,
he would do lots of.
Yeah.
And then I think after that he just threw the pick away. Yeah. But because I remember because that was one of those moments you learn certain things at certain ages and you just never quit doing it. And I still play like that. Every time I do a solo, I never do it just with my pick.
Yeah.
Because I spent 2 years as a kid.
Did you ever use finger picks, like a thumb pick and then finger picks?
I've tried those. I don't get along with them really well.
Yeah, back in the day when the Love and Spoonful, those guys used finger picks and thumb picks and stuff. And so back then, I tried those. Yeah, the folk guys. I tried doing that.
And George Thorogood.
The thumb pick was good in one way. You didn't drop your pick; it was stuck on your thumb.
Right.
So
I ended up getting it stuck in the strings all the time. Like I didn't have enough finesse. I guess. But I mean, I still play out. You can see this on here. I mean, when I play.
This way, the other fingers don't feel insulted that you're not using them.
But that's just
these two. I've utilized my middle finger in that when I point, when I play live.
That's right.
I move the pick to
the signature Bob.
The 2 fingers here and point with this finger,
like
and then
that,
like that. Oh yeah, there you go.
Or if you're in Hawaii.
Correct. Yeah.
But
mahalo. Which means peace as well.
I know. I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Now I've got Hendrix stuck in my head. What I play there by accident was the turnaround on Voodoo Child.
Oh, Voodoo
Can't do it, man. The guy's just too much.
Yeah, his solo chops on that thing are off the map.
But the rhythm, like his rhythm.
His feel for everything was very, very unique. And again, it was especially difficult for those of us who saw him back in the day because he played left-handed, and so it was very hard to cop what he was doing. And here's a guy who, as I remember it, back in the day when he played in Greenwich Village, he played with his teeth a lot. So he'd lift the guitar up and he'd be, playing the Hey Joe solo with his teeth. I mean, how do you cop a solo when the guy's playing with his teeth? I mean, we couldn't even play with our hands. And this guy's playing with he's picking the strings with his teeth.
What an asshole.
What a show off. I mean, the guy was such a show off, and he did it with such, a smile on his face that it never appeared to be ego. He'd sling the guitar behind him and play and sing while the guitar was behind him. Then he'd stick it up behind his neck, and then his teeth and all of that. I mean, the guy was just an incredible show off and showman. But when he just sat and played, that's where the real magic came, because then he could really concentrate on what he was playing, and because the guy's his space of where his soul connected with his talent was so advanced, like a extraterrestrial. His ideas were, for us that saw him, before he became Jimi Hendrix, when he was Jimmy James and the Blue Flames, even then, he was, we were looking for the spaceship because we couldn't relate to that this guy could be like what Dan's playing now. Those chords were unheard of in what anybody was doing. He came up with amazing stuff. And the Little Wing stuff, as Jimmy told me back in the day, he got from Curtis Mayfield.
Yeah.
From the Impressions, who played guitar and played all the little breedums that you hear in Little Wing. That's where Jimmy got him. And I remember when I worked with LaBelle, we actually played the Apollo Theater with Curtis Mayfield as the headliner. And I remember telling Curtis the story, and he was like, "That ain't true." And I was like, "So I would sit here and waste my time telling you that Jimi Hendrix told me he was that you were one of his biggest influences because of all that Little Wing stuff?" Curtis Mayfield said to me, "Man, that made my day." And it was a true story. I remember Jimmy saying to me, when I said, "So who do you listen to?" I know he loved Clapton, but when he mentioned Curtis Mayfield, that was the Little Wing connection right there, those little chords.
I've heard Curtis Mayfield, and then, of course, you can hear, like, Freddie King all over his stuff. But then the one that's always the oddball, and I had it in my head, and I just drew an absolute blank, my favorite Wes Montgomery.
Wes Montgomery.
With the octaves.
Totally.
I mean, that's Wes Montgomery singing.
Yeah. So like that Third Stone from the Sun,
Right.
which was the first thing that he played when he auditioned at the Cafe Wa in 1965, I guess it was, or 66, was that the instrumental piece that turned into Third Stone from the Sun, back when he was Jimmy James and the Blue Flame.
So my friend Steve here says his rendition of Like a Rolling Stone, rhythm chops are jaw-dropping. Oh, yeah.
Jaw-dropping. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy, everybody thinks of the solos, but his rhythm guitar playing was sick. Totally sick. Yeah, he had, you talk about a funk feel and a blues feel and a metal feel and a rock feel. He was a book on every feel you could possibly have. The guy could play.
What's the notes? What's the opening notes on Fire? I always forget.
Bam, bam, da-da-da-dum. Yeah.
But it's octaves, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where's it go?
Stay tuned for next week's show when we'll have learned the song and it's entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, his chukka-chukka sounds. He could make sounds with the guitar, with the wah-wah and the fuzz face and stuff and the toggle switch and all those little tricks. Without playing a note, without playing an actual, what note is that? It's no note, it's a chukka-chukka-chukka and a woo, and all of that stuff, which...
Like, so Mitch Mitchell's back there going,
yeah,
and he's back there,
Correct, yeah. His vocabulary, like I said, was so off the map.
I don't care about that. You got a new fool, well, I like it like that. I have only one itch and desire. Let me stand next to your fire.
Ooh, let me stand next to your fire. It was just a great piece. Just a great piece. Totally.
Where's it go? God, I haven't played that song in so long.
I remember we did that with Meatloaf one day on stage. Meatloaf set fire to something on stage, and we were in the middle of doing Paradise by the Dashboard Light, the big vamp section, and he was doing some shtick on stage and started burning something, and the band, we were so good that we actually clicked into the bam bam, and that was hilarious. Everybody hearing "Let Me Stand Next to Your Fire" with him.
What are the notes, Frank? The intro, down, 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 down. Just type out the notes. Is that?
Are we on with Ultimate Guitar or what? Yeah, that sounds pretty close. Yeah, I think is it in D?
That's what he's saying here, D.
Yeah.
I'm doing G, F sharp, E, F sharp, D flat. I literally haven't played since like high school.
Great song. Great song. Like all his songs.
Is that right?
Sounds right.
I don't know.
So close enough.
Yeah, I'll have to figure it out. I'll come back next week. No way. No, those aren't the notes, Frank.
Seems to be a discrepancy here in the notes. We're going to have to check with Ultimate Guitar.
Not putting myself out there like this. Well, just look it up on Google really quick. I just don't have a keyboard in front of me. I think it's the right intervals. I don't know if it's the right note. So. Or or is it higher?
I think that's better.
Ustreamer, Dan, is the whiskey available at your distributors yet? No, we're waiting on Transformers. They'll be out next month. And there will be a flood of them next month. Don't worry. Yeah. Sing it, Bob.
I don't know all the lyrics.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's it?
If you let me stand next to your fire. All right, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah, I could go endlessly on Jimmy.
Yeah. Certainly one of the greatest guitar players ever lived, period.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, guys, it's getting late. It's almost 2 o'clock, though. Less game, yeah. I'll just roll the guitar back. I need a Strat, though. That's a problem. I can do it neck pick up here and get similar.
Yep.
What's going on here? Did I lose my chord? Yeah, I got to blend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right when can Brett do that? Can he play drums that well?
Can he play?
Do all that
Yes, he
hardcore
can.
like 60s crap?
Yes, he can. I mean, he studied with
Well,
Tony
the
Williams.
drums are mic'd up. Let's do it.
We'll do the jam and the bass. How about next week we prepare a little tune-in for you?
Yeah, let's do it next week.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
Hendrix.
Or we could do Hey Joe. That's a really great one, too.
Yeah.
That was the first song that he really did back in, that period of time when he was Jimmy James that everybody gravitated to as the de facto, holy crap, Jimi Hendrix, a soulful vocal with all of the nuances he placed inside the rhythms, and then he would play the solo with his teeth. I was there the day Chas Chandler, who became his manager right after that, saw Jimmy play that, and the guy dropped his drink right into his lap when he saw Jimi Hendrix play with his teeth. That is a fact. I was there. I saw it with my own eyes.
You know what's funny is I've talked to like 4 or 5 people that saw Hendrix when he first came back from England.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there's 5 bands playing at the whatever, the bitter end or something, you know. And, you know, there'd be like Schmo and the Schmoes and Schmuck and the Schmucks, and then Jimi Hendrix, and then 2 other bands. Everybody's there dancing, playing, having fun, like nice, polite applause. Hey, rock and roll bands.
Right.
And the Hendrix came on, and they said, no one clapped for the first 2 or 3 songs. And like, really? Why? Because they didn't like it? Like, no, because they were stunned.
Yeah.
Just went there and went, what the fuck is he doing? You know, that kind of thing. Where like he just blew their pants off. Literally, the people didn't know what to do. They're like, coffee.
Yeah, and the guy was totally modest guy. You know, flattery made him uncomfortable. It's a direct quote from him that people complimenting him made him uncomfortable. You know, and as he said, when you play in front of people, you show people a part of your soul. I thought that was a great line from him. You know, the person that I knew when I met him the few times that we hung out, he was a very modest guy, an incredibly spacey guy. And a soft-spoken guy.
Yeah, I heard he was just really gentle.
He was very gentle, and women loved him. Women adored him. You know, I mean, he was a magnet for women. It was just unbelievable beyond belief. Whether it was
big hands and big feet,
whether it was because of that or because of his talent, you know, I think it was just his
You've
vibe.
Heard Little Richard's quote on him, right? You know, when he played for Little Richard.
Well, he was the guitar player.
Yeah,
yeah,
and he had seen Jimmy's, dressing room stuff. And was very impressed. And he always said he wanted to play Jimmy like Jimmy played that guitar. God bless
Jimmy Richard. Was one of the artists back in the day who had a plaster caster of his twanger.
His
Schwanski, done by the plaster casters of San Francisco who would...
Well, we need to look that up on Google.
who would go to rock stars and say, I want to make a plaster cast of your twanger. And they had a whole setup of, here's Jimmy's twanger and Jim Morrison's twanger and, other people's.
Wow.
Yeah, which was very interesting back in the day, that,
Kind of weirds me out, to be honest.
They were relatively good-looking girls who, look, I'm having trouble maintaining this, twanger. Can you give me a hand? I guess they lended, lip service or a hand as needed. Anyway, Plastercasters, Google it. You'll be surprised. They never got around to me, unfortunately. I'm not sure it was because of size or just lack of fame, but...
Yeah. Well, one of the Ustreamers here says, I understand his pain. I feel uncomfortable at all my gigs. Yeah, it's the adoring fans are really awkward sometimes when I play. The only thing is I mostly play at elementary schools, but that's a different conversation. It's the opposite for me. Playing makes the audience uncomfortable.
Well, that's when you have to hand out the earplugs like I did with Paul Stanley, where we were way too
right.
loud, and the front row would be grimacing, and I'd be passing down those earplugs. Here you go. You'll be better now.
I left off a thing here. He typed it again. I'm sorry. And is little Elvis loud enough to play unmiked at a club? Yeah, I do all the time. It's fine. It depends on where you live. Like here in LA, stage volumes are nothing. Nobody wants to hear a loud band in his town. I think they're just over it.
And the PA guy is inevitably going to say, I can't do a mix unless you let me control the volumes.
That's right. Yeah, if they have any PA system at a club and a sound man worth his salt,
he's going to try to be able to put the vocals on top of it, and so the guitars have to come down.
He's going to squash you into oblivion. Anyway, if you crank up your amp, you're just not going to be in the mix.
Yeah. That's why people had master volumes. When I remember when we first saw a master volume, it was just like I can still have my sound and I
can get distortion.
Turn down the overall volume. That was a big thing without sacrificing your feedback and your sound and whatever it was, just sustain like earlier,
Alvin Leach, or Albert Leach, whatever, A. Leach, San Francisco Bay. Yeah, Elvis is plenty loud for the Bay Area. I've played up there.
There you go.
I've played up there quite a bit, and you'll be fine. Trust me. And I don't know if you notice on that combo, I tilted the baffle back a little bit so the speaker kind of shoots up. And so for
that
me,
might help you to hear.
Well, the idea for me was I'm normally 15 feet away from my amp, 10 to 15 feet away. And so that speaker's pointing right at the back of my head. So I always do the old trick where I point it right at my mic in a small club. And then when I need to take a solo, I step aside.
And this way it bleeds into the mic.
And my vocal mic grabs a little bit of it and kind of sends it through the whole PA system. Because in my band, I actually sing on 90% of the songs. I'm either singing lead or singing harmony. So I always just cover up my mic when I'm playing rhythm. And if I need to take solo, I step aside and boom, I get, screw you, sound man. I'll still use your PA.
Yeah, right.
Motherfucker.
Yeah, exactly.
But I love sound men. I kid sound men. Oh, but I said to my wife.
Boom. Try a TV show or something and try for some volume on that and watch what
Kirk
happens.
Spencer says they only charge an audience $1 to get in, but $5 to get out. Yeah. Anyway, fellas.
And that's with a 2-drink minimum.
That's right. That's right. Unless the game was on.
Right, exactly. Unless you paid to see the World Series or the Super Bowl. Or something.
That's right. Yeah, or the buffet was up.
The buffet.
Yeah. And where I play, it's really more about the 4 o'clock Blue Plate special, but that's another conversation. Bring in your own teeth. And anyway, that's why. Hey, Frank.
You resemble these remarks. Come on.
It's too easy. It's too easy. Frank Falbo's on, and we have this running joke. There's this guy. I'm not going to say names, but he's designing amps clearly made for senior citizens.
Great. So they come with earplugs and everything.
No, they're like really light.
Right, this way you can haul them around, and they're not too loud.
So if you're playing over at the rest home at 2:30.
So if Jackie Mason's jamming,
right,
with Don Rickles, then they can keep it down. They can still tell jokes over.
Well, you get those 2:30 gigs at the rest homes right after nap time, and
it doesn't disturb those who didn't make it. Yeah,
right. So they play really clean, and they weigh like 20 pounds. And, comes with a coupon for cream corn.
Is it like, senior 365s? Is that what it is?
Yeah, you get an AARP.
The brand 365.
You get an AARP discount on it.
The colon helper 365.
Colon blow 20. Yeah, just so you know, that's why
the asthma reliever amp.
That's my long-term strategy with 65 because we all retire at 65.
I thought it was when I'm 64. Why didn't McCartney do 65 then?
This was just "Will You Still Love Me?" Will you still need me?
Right. When I'm 64. Yeah, exactly.
The original version.
He's actually older than 64 now.
He's way older than 64. Yeah, will you still blow me? I mean, will you still love me when I'm... Anyway, that's another thing.
Indeed.
Was that... Did you ever see... what was it? Walk Hard, where they wrote all those country songs.
Oh, yeah.
In my dream, and his wife turns to his wife and he sings, "In my dreams, you're still blowing me." Kisses.
Yeah. Alongside the other wonderful hits, I'd rather eat you than starve and all of that stuff.
Yeah. So Frank says very lightweight, so you can lift it without blowing your hip replacement. Yeah, that's right.
Hip replacement, it makes it easier on the
Well, when you got the little golf cart, you're driving around the facility, you can't put a heavy amp in those. Right. Or the little three-wheel scooter.
Well, a lot of them, they go right to that Steinberger guitar, which weighs... Which weighs nothing. That guitar, actually, I remember when Paul Stanley played it in '89 back in the day. If he would break a string, he'd just throw the guitar on the floor and it never hurt it. Those guitars were unbreakable.
I know. It's all, wow, we're going so to hell. We got some bad karma coming our way.
What do we do now?
Did pray. That's right. Dear Jimmy. Well, anyway, guys, so obviously we've degraded into decadence here.
We have?
And on that cheery note, I think it's time to sign off. So thanks for hanging out today. I'm glad we had some good tech talk, and got a little taste of the whiskey.
Hey, we're some acid flashbacks from us.
We're all growing old. My back hurts now. Hey. Not you. You're kind of timeless, and it freaks me out.
Everyone says, Bob, you look the same. Yeah, I'm still not losing my hair.
That's right. My hair loss has stopped.
Exactly. Nature started, I finished.
Yeah. Frank, I'm going to leave that one alone, but yeah, you figure out who we're talking about.
Oh, hey, I was the head of the band.
Oh! Go to the head of the line. Anyway.
I was ahead of my time.
Guys, really appreciate you sincerely. Thanks to Bob and Brett for letting me invade Office Studios. Oh, which, by the way, I have money for you.
Really?
Yeah.
Looks like lunch is on Dan.
Cash money, baby.
Hip hip and tally ho.
And we'll see you next week. All right, have a good one, guys. Thank you, Bob, for hanging out with me.
Practice your guitar. Get these amps. They're the best.
Don't be my sugar.